The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
And welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. So thrilled to be here with you on this Friday, Friday the 13th. I don't know if you're superstitious. We're going to hope for the best, right? We do have gremlins show up from time to time on this show, but we're going to hope that they do not make it today. And that we're all going to move ahead on our Friday the 13th and do the very best that we can. In any case, we are going to be with you live for the next 2 hours talking about autism from a 360-degree perspective, whether you're an individual who is on the spectrum yourself or you're a parent, teacher, practitioner working with an individual on the spectrum. We know you have questions, you have suggestions, you have topics that you'd like to have covered. We're here to be that conduit for you and hopefully get your questions answered and shed some light and some hope about how we can all create progress in our lives, really all of us. And that's something that I can get really excited about. This entire show is meant to be interactive. We hope that you will join us and give us your comments and suggestions and ask those all-important questions. So Emily's going to show you some of the different ways that you can get a hold of us here at the show. I'm going to remind you that one of the best ways to watch us live, and notice that there are more than one way to watch us live, but you can watch us live at www.autism-live.com. When you go there, you will either see the live show or the most recently recorded show, and you can pick other shows that you would like to see as well. We've changed it up recently because you guys asked for it that way. Thrilled to be able to do that. There's also a white box next to the computer screen where you watch the show. It is an interactive box. You put your cursor there, you type away, hit enter, and it shows up right here on my screen. And I have the ability to talk to you in that way and to ask your questions of the experts that we have that will be joined by in just a little while. Great experts on Friday, right? So I want to remind you that that's entirely free. There is no cost for that. You don't have to log in. In fact, we have no idea who you are. You have complete anonymity unless you choose to tell us who you are. If you want us to get back to you with something, you can put your email there, and we will not share that with the audience at large. So a wonderful way for you to communicate with us. But there are other ways in which to watch the show, other ways to communicate with us. I hope as you're thinking about ways to communicate with us, take a swing by our Facebook page and like us while you're there. You also want to sign up for the free newsletter because it only comes once a month. We don't put you on a mailing list. We're not, blasting you with information. We know you're too busy, frankly. Yet there's a great reason to get that newsletter because my office is filling up with free stuff that we're going to be giving away in the coming months. In fact, in just a little while, we're going to talk about something that you could participate in, a study you can participate in and get a free Roku. How cool could that be? So stay tuned. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. In any case, we want you to participate in a way that's comfortable for you. You can watch us on YouTube. We're live now on YouTube. For those of you who are watching on tablets, that's a great way to watch us. Or watching on your phone and you want to watch it live, go to our YouTube channel, subscribe while you're there, and participate in that way. Okay. I also like to remind you at the top of the show a couple of things. One, nobody on this show can give child-specific advice. Really good reason for that is that there's no possible way, even if you wrote us a small novella on the live feature, no one could know, none of our experts could know your child well enough or yourself well enough to give you specific advice. Now, having said that, there are a lot of things that we can talk about and a lot of things that we can learn and a lot of questions we can ask and suggestions that we can give to try to help you to have progress. And as I talk about the experts and the things that they'll be talking about later on, I want to remind you, I am not an expert. I am a mom. My son was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2.5. He is now 10, and he is a remarkable young man that I am able to have extensive conversations about the universe with. And I am so grateful for that. And I can tell you that the reason why I have that, I'm 100% clear, it's because I ran into people who gave me directions to go in. So they didn't tell me the whole, because it's different for every kid, right? But they gave me directions to go in that led me to quality ABA therapy. And as a result, I got my child back. And that's it's been an amazing journey. It's a journey we're still on, but I've got my child back. And so my mission here is to pay that forward. I got information at a crucial time, and it's important to me to share information for you at the crucial time that you are. So I hope you participate. I hope that you'll write into us, tell us what you need, what you're looking for, even if it's just to say, you know what, today I feel really alone, and I feel like nobody gets it, because I can assure you that there are a lot of people here who get it, that we understand the trials and the tribulations of the daily basis, and we understand the victories, and we understand how important it is to celebrate those as well. So no matter where you are today, if you're, in the gutter and going, man, today just bites, or you're in a place where you go, something really cool happened, I hope you'll share and participate, because together we all can get through this and help the individuals in our lives that want to make progress, but also help ourselves, and that's an amazing thing. So having said all of that, we like to start every morning with something we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is the time of day when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym. We try to make sense of it within our lives. We hear experts saying these terms as if they use them in their lives on a regular basis, and that everyone must know what these things mean. And not only that, they must know what they mean within the context of autism and the context of our child, of ourselves. We don't use these terms. We never use these terms. We're new to this party, right? But it helps if we understand what they're talking about. And instead of feeling like we got to take a course and sit down and learn all these terms and memorize them and have flashcards, and bless you, I know some of you have done that. Bless you, bless you, bless you. We try to take it a little bit at a time and see that we get progress. A lot how we teach our kids. Little slice at a time. That's how you eat that whole elephant, right? One bite at a time. So today's term is something that can be very confusing. There it is, stereotypy. I remember the first 22 times I heard this term, I was like, are you talking about a stereo? What are we talking about here? I'm that old. I'm like, are you talking about a hi-fi? What are you talking about? And what does this have to do with autism? So let's take a look at our actual definition. Stereotypy, repetitive or ritualistic behavior, sometimes referred to as self-stimulatory behavior or stimming. This is something that we hear a lot. Oh, he was stimming. And I remember the first time I asked an expert when we were in the early intervention before we started ABA, I said, what is this stimming you keep referring to? And she was like, well, it's stimming. Well, thank you. Now I understand. Could you use different words? And she didn't even know to reference that it's self-stimulatory, which a lot of times is wrong. We use the term self-stimulatory, but sometimes our kids are behaving in a way and doing these repetitive or ritualistic behaviors not to stimulate themselves, but to soothe themselves. Still, people refer to it as stimming, but a lot of times they are actually automatically reinforcing. We'll talk about that in just a second. But let's take a look at our working definition. Behaviors that are done repetitively. These are the body rocking, hand flapping, lining up the toys, movie talk, the things that our kids do that a lot of times we look at it and we go, that's odd, or that's weird, or that's strange. Why are they doing that? And it looks odd to other people. It's the kind of stuff that draws attention to it, and it doesn't seem to have a purpose. It's the stuff that, a lot of times people will say, oh, well, that's just the autism, and throw their hands up in the air. It's really important that we understand that every behavior that we engage in has a reason. It's communicating something, or it's achieving some goal. We talk about the paycheck. Every every behavior we do on a regular basis has a paycheck, or we wouldn't do it. So why are our kids lining things up? Why are they flapping their hands? Why are they walking on their toes? Why are they inflexible? Why are they repeating things from movie talk? Why are they doing these things? And a lot of times in the show we talk about the four usual suspects, that sometimes people do stuff for attention, sometimes they do things to escape something, sometimes they do something to get access to someone or something, and sometimes, number 4 on the usual suspect list, is that it's automatically reinforcing. That means that there's something about it that has a paycheck in and of itself, right? Why do people sit and click a pen endlessly? It's not really serving a purpose, right? It's not getting anything done. If you click it once, you've achieved a task. But if you're clicking it, it's because there's something about that that's feeling good to you. It's letting off some kind of steam. It might be self-soothing. It might be self-stimulating. It might help you to get your creative thoughts under control. Why do people sit and cross their legs and flap their foot? It's automatically reinforcing. And those kinds of things are hard because each person is so individual. You know, we need to start to look at it and go, what is it feeding? What is it? What purpose is it serving? Because if it's getting in the way of something, when a child wants to sit and line up cars and they don't want to do anything else, then we have to intervene, right? Well, we can do that if we figure out what is it taking care of it. Is it calming the nerves? Because if things are orderly, then we're calmed down, because then we have to find something else that calms the child down and makes them feel like things are orderly, right? If the child is hand flapping, it may be because that calms the child down. Have you ever tried it? It's I don't know, there's something soothing about it. But for some kids, when they do this, the motion of their hands, it kind of blurs and they see colors and it's kind of pretty. Right? Well, how we intervene depends on what paycheck we're trying to take the place of. And there's nothing wrong with a child doing this, except that if you're trying to teach them how to write, you can't get them to learn how to write while they're doing this, right? So, time and a place for the self-stimulatory behavior that is also referred to as stereotypy. My son participates still to this day in vocal stereotypy, that if he is left to his own devices, he'll start making these very high-pitched, swirly noises. Sometimes he sounds like R2-D2. And you know, we allow him to do it sometimes as a self-soothing thing, but we try to strengthen the muscle for him to recognize when he's doing it and make a choice about, is this an appropriate place? Because if he's at school, it drives other kids crazy. And not only can they not do their schoolwork, then they start to pick on him about it, you know? So stereotypy, behaviors that are done repetitively, and we can circumvent them. But it's so important that we know, or that we get an idea of what's the purpose of this behavior? What's the paycheck? And then we can give a paycheck in a different way at a different time. And that will lessen that repetitive behavior. We don't take anything at face value and go, oh, that's just autism. There's nothing we can do about it. That just isn't true. There's all kinds of hope. And if your child is engaged in stereotypy that prevents them from engaging in the world or being able to learn something, then it becomes something you want to target. Okay, stereotypy. Moving on. We always have a question of the day for you, and we hope you participate with us on Facebook. We will have time later on, I hope, to check in. Our question today is, what's the hardest part of dealing with your child's tantrums? Is it what other people think? Is it that your child swipes things off of tables and breaks them? Is it that you're afraid your child is going to hurt themselves? Is it that you're afraid your child is going to hurt someone else? Is it what your mother-in-law thinks? You know, there's so many things to pick from, and I'm sure that there are many that I haven't mentioned. So write in and tell us, because, you know, it helps to name it. It helps to say what it is. We might get an opportunity with our experts to talk about some of those things, either today or on a future show. And it also helps other people to know they're not alone, that, oh my gosh, that's really the hard part of it for me too. Sometimes we don't even realize what the hardest part of it is. I'll be honest with you that when my son was tantruming on a regular basis, the hardest part for me was the emotional toll it took on me, because I felt that I was somehow supposed to be a super mom and have made it so that tantrums never happen. And I was supposed to have known how to do it without having read a book. It was supposed to be in my DNA. And the fact that I didn't know how to do it made me feel like I was a failure. That clearly other people had figured it out, and the fact that I hadn't figured it out meant that I was a failure. And it wasn't until people helped me and realized there's things that you can do, but none of them involve beating yourself up. There are tools, there are skills that you can learn that will help you to deal with a tantrum and help you to diminish the tantrum, but absolutely none of them have anything to do with beating yourself up. That's a waste of time. But there are things that I can do. That was the hardest part for me, though, feeling the failure. We always have a topic of the day that we like to focus on, and this entire week we have been focusing on tantrums and meltdowns. This is, one of the hardest things. It prevents us from having the relationship with our children that we would like to have. It prevents our children from having relationships with other people. It can put our children in danger, literal danger, and it can prevent our children from being able to learn. It's not okay to just say, my child tantrums and my child has meltdowns, and that there's a period at the end of that sentence. We know that tantrums are a part of growing up. Meltdowns aren't. Meltdowns, as we've been saying this week, often have to do with things that are happening in the environment. We know that there are going to be a certain amount of tantrums, but we want to be as highly skilled as we can be in dealing with those tantrums and not causing them to continue. And if we're not careful, especially with kids on the autism spectrum, if we're not careful, we can be actually investing in the tantrums and making sure that they happen more often. I was guilty of that. So if you feel like, oh no, I'm a failure because I've made it so the tantrums, oh no, you're in good company. But let's do better today, right? Let's do better today. So some of the things that we have going on today, and it's Friday, I love Friday, for so many reasons, but some of the things that we have going on today, in just a few minutes, we're going to be joined by Dr. Adel Najdowski for a segment that we call Real Progress with Dr. Adel. She's going to be with us, and I've given her some of the questions that you guys have been writing in, and I know there have been some more that came in yesterday and last night. We'll get to as many of them as we possibly can. A little bit later on in the show, we have our funding tip because it's Friday, and Friday is all about funding, right? And a little bit later on, we're going to be joined by Dr. Jonathan Tarbox, and we call that Science Beat with Dr. Tarbox, and he helps us to not only understand some of the interventions that we can do for specific behaviors, but what the science behind that is, what the studies have shown is effective. We want to be as efficient and as effective as we can, and a lot of times the science is already there for us to tell us how we want to proceed. So all of that and more, and your questions in the moment live here on Autism Live. Stick with us. We'll be right back after these messages.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Hi, Lisa Ackerman from Taka here to do some more cooking. Are you ready? Allergy-friendly fun, and I've got a guest.
I'm Jamie Davis. Yes, I'm her sister.
Today we're all about cooking something really fun and healthy. That's a dessert. We're going to actually use carrots, real carrots, and we're going to talk about how to make the best tasting carrot cake you could ever hope for. So it's really easy. You don't want to buy the carrots that are the baby carrots. Why?
Well, those aren't really carrots. What they do is they take carrots, they mush them all up, they take whatever the carrot looks like, they throw it in a bin, they bleach them, and they process them, and then they have a little machine that makes them into little formed baby carrots. So they're really not born that way.
So this is what a carrot really looks like?
Yeah.
Awesome. Good to know. So I just want to show everybody how to make really simply. We just washed off the carrots. They were really dirty from the farmer's market. And we're going to throw them in to our food processor. So what's good about the food processor is that we can go for a really fine grade. So I'm going to go ahead and add the 3 cups of carrots. Then the next thing I'm going to pull in is our gluten-free, casein-free flours. I'm using a protein-based flour. Bob's Red Mill is great. I also have my flaxseed meal and pure cane sugar that's organic. I cut it down already, so you don't need to cut it again.
And one of the reasons why we like to use organic sugar is because, once again, most sugars on the market are bleached to make them look perfect.
Yeah, we don't like perfect.
No,
We like ours.
that's why we like each other.
All right, so we've added our baking soda, baking powder, xanthan gum, nutmeg, and salt. Now, again, why we use the gums is that's the ingredient that actually holds the flour together. Regular flour automatically has that gluten. This is the replacement to the gluten. These are the secret ingredients for the cake itself. 3/4 cup of the crushed pineapple is in there. That gives it a beautiful texture and flavor. And now what I'm using is the oil. What are your favorite oils, Jamie?
I like using coconut oil any chance I
Yes.
get. In fact, coconut oil would be excellent in a carrot cake.
Now what I did was I reserved a little bit of the oil and we placed it in the bottom of that pan so it doesn't stick.
Yep.
But we love the baking stones.
Yes.
Why do we love the baking stones?
Evenly cooks
Yes.
and easy cleanup.
If you like crispy, you got to get a baking stone. I also feel that they're less toxic. So now I'm going to cook this thing at 350 for about 35 minutes. You really want to get it golden. Let's get it in there. Awesome. So now that we got our cake all done, let's get on with the frosting. Coconut oil, probably the best thing in the world you can eat. It's so good for your brain. It's one of the best oils that we can use. So I'm going to use a 1/3 cup of the coconut oil. And then we're going to do 1 teaspoon of an organic vanilla, Madagascar, and make sure it's alcohol free. And then what we're going to do is add 16 ounces of organic powdered sugar. And we're going to add our 4 to 6 tablespoons of coconut milk. I'm using the whisk version here on the KitchenAid, which will give it a nice mix. All right, so if you get any on the sides, you just come on in with your little spatula. And this makes the best frosting for the cake. So we're almost done whipping it up. And voila, we are talking good stuff right here. We have the best situation for the best birthday cake, especially if you want to deal with something that perhaps has a little less sugar. You've got a great cake that no one will know the difference. I'm not a decorator. I don't like to decorate. I just want to eat it, and I don't care what it looks like. Ask my family. I'm a family with autism. I just want to eat the cake. Are you ready to do this? It can be your birthday. Yay! So to me,
my goodness, so
this
good.
is so good. It's meant to be gooey, as you can see. But what I love about this is a great birthday cake with extra frosting to make your kids happy. A little less sugar and a lot of love. So if you have any questions, we'd love to hear from you. You can email us at autismlive@gmail.com and on Facebook.com/autismlive. And then you can reach me and Jamie and get some more ideas from the taco recipe side. So let's have some more
You
cake.
say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Welcome back to Autism Live. Joining us in the studio right now is the wonderful and fabulous Dr. Adel Najdowski. She is the Director of Dissemination and Research for Skills, and she is also one of the co-creators of Skills and one of my favorite people on the face of the earth. So,
Thank you, Shannon.
well, all of those things and more. A remarkable human being and somebody who is very helpful to our kids and has really been a part of changing the way all of us get to be a part of our children's team. So a remarkable young woman, and thrilled to have her here and answering you guys' questions. So thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
And I'm going to dive right in. We
Okay.
had a question that came in just yesterday. The person wrote in and said, I'm the proud mother of 2 lovely boys, both diagnosed with autism. My first son is doing well. He is just beginning his 2nd year of college. My other son is also doing well academically, but I worry about him as at 16, he's never had a proper solid meal in his life. 16 years old. He's absolutely terrified to even broach the subject of food. Not even mashed potatoes passes his lips. Anything solid has to be liquefied, and even then he might not eat it. Is this common in autism? She goes on to say that she lives in London and she has not heard of any practical help for him. She says, I've read about programs in America, but I can't afford them. And this is a mom who's got some challenges of her own. She is at home, reports that she's unable to work because of strokes that happened for her at the age of 26. But she's looking for some advice. And in London, now you are somebody who has quite a great deal of expertise in the area of food issues and feeding issues. So would love to have your thoughts on this.
Right. So it sounds like everything that you're having to feed your son is liquefied. I'm imagining you're putting it in a blender, turning it into puree. I'm kind of wondering if you're also adding in liquids to make it even more liquidy, because typically speaking, I would say you're getting to like a baby food version puree type thing. If your son isn't even at the level of that and it's really a straight liquid, you could start by adding in some powders, like maybe get some ones that are vitamins or protein or whatever it may be, and just slowly start to thicken that up a little bit to where you can get it to a puree version. But overall, what you're looking at is just a very slow, gradual process of moving towards the goal of someday eating solid foods and being extremely patient with it and taking very small steps.
And I want to add in, too, that we had a mom write to us a couple of weeks ago with a 16-year-old girl, and the issue wasn't so much about solid foods, but it was about fruits and vegetables. And Dr. Najdowski had talked about this slow ramping up, and the mom has written back and said that her daughter has started eating applesauce, and what an amazing thing. And I think, we get caught up in this, that it needs to be quick, but the truth is, where are we going?
Yeah.
We've got time.
So just to give you an example of how slow it can be, I have done stuff like this. Worked with a child who was still eating the puree version of baby foods in the jars. And we kind of looked at testing out 4 different textures with that child. So we knew that he would eat puree. We then bumped it up to a texture that's basically like an oatmeal. So it's kind of like a puree with a little bit of lumps. And then past that was like a ground. So like think of ground beef or something like that. But you can do this with any food in a blender. You just chop it. So it kind of has that same consistency of like what a ground would be. And then from there it went to chopped fine, which would be basically like taking the solid food and just very much chopping it, like almost like when you mince an onion or something like that. And then slowly increasing that size to a regular size. Now, you would think maybe you could actually jump from those 4 levels. But that wasn't possible.
Yeah.
We actually had to start with taking and doing like, I think it was 75% puree mixed with 25% of the like oatmeal texture. So literally, it was still almost completely puree with every now and then a small lump or something in it. And then once that was working out okay, and we had a criterion of, no spitting out the food, swallowing the food on the first presentation of all the bites that were presented across 3 consecutive meals, let's say.
And I have to interrupt you for just a second, because I'm starting to think about this and think, she probably needs some help. And she has said that I know that there are programs in America. Are you aware of anything feeding in London, or that's something that we can do a little bit more research on?
I am not personally aware, but I have friends in the field who are very knowledgeable about how to treat feeding that are here in the States, and they might have contacts.
Okay.
And they might even be able to still assist remotely, because I know that they've done a lot of consultation, and they might have even their own programs where they can do it all over the world. I really don't know at this point. But one of the things that was mentioned is that she can't afford it.
Yeah,
so that's a little bit problematic.
And we know that in London, it's not going to be a situation where they're going to pay for an American program.
So I'm trying to present an idea here that would be free, and the only effort that it would involve is just you'd have to make all these different food textures. You can do it in advance. You can freeze it.
Okay.
You can then take it out, like make batches of things. And then slowly, I mean, it's like maybe you just start with a teaspoon or something, do the mixture. And then when he's okay with that and doing that across several meals without any protesting or spitting out the food or whatever, then adding another, So just remembering not to go too fast.
Okay.
And
Really,
slowly
really key.
bumping it up.
But in the meantime, too, if you want to write into us and make sure that we have your email address, maybe we can find out who some of those experts are that have connections with
Definitely.
With something that might be happening in London, because it can be overwhelming. I know. I think it's easy enough to do as long as you're not having other issues.
Yeah.
Is what I'm concerned about.
Yeah.
All right. But we know that this has worked, and when you say I'm not aware of a program that would be workable, we know that this kind of thing works with a wide variety of kids different ages.
Yeah, this is called stimulus fading. You're basically fading the consistency or the texture over time. And this procedure has been shown to do all kinds of things for kids.
Great.
Yeah,
Super advice. We're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back more with Dr. Najdowski answering your questions. Stick with us.
The Institute for Behavioral Training provides courses in applied behavior analysis for the treatment of autism. Access IBT e-learning videos on the move and learn at your own pace.
I'm going to talk a little bit about intensity of treatment.
IBT e-learning makes any location your classroom on the go.
So our objectives for today are to really learn what is autism and how is it diagnosed.
Get professional guidance with IBT face-to-face training. IBT face-to-face training courses prepare you to effectively implement ABA-based interventions. Choose between small group and one-to-one instruction. Earn BCBA supervision hours via one-to-one video conferencing.
So I had a chance to review your BIP today. You know what? It looked really good. You did a good job with it.
IBT continuing education courses. Earn credit through webinars, conferences, article reviews, and e-learning videos. You can learn more at ibehavioraltraining.com. IBT, 360 degrees of ABA training.
Welcome back to Autism Live. Our very special guest here in the studio with us is Dr. Adel Najdowski. She's the Senior Content Development Contributor, for Skills, one of the co-designers, the co-authors, what is the phrase that I usually use?
Co-creator.
Co-creator, that's the word that I use for Skills. An amazing, amazing tool. And somebody has written in with a question. My kid is almost 4. We're already having ABA services through another agency and also doing biomedical intervention, but I feel something is missing. Something more can be done. It's almost a year since we started ABA. Do you think Skills will help me and my kid?
Yeah, it's so hard to answer questions sometimes because I always feel like I want to follow those up with more questions.
And throw them out there. Sometimes they're listening.
The things that come to mind for me are you're feeling something's missing, but you're getting ABA. So the first thing I want to say is good job getting ABA. That's excellent. But maybe what's missing is you're not doing enough hours. I don't know exactly what your situation is, but ABA has been shown to be effective when it's done intensively. So your child's 4. You're probably should be doing somewhere around at least 30 hours a week if you possibly can, and I don't know if you're doing that. But that's what the research shows us is going to have the best outcomes. So if you're feeling something's lacking, maybe you're just feeling you're not doing enough. Now, if you're already doing all those hours and you still feel something's lacking, perhaps it's just the curriculum targets that your provider is working on, and you feel that they're not maybe well balanced, like maybe they're too focused on one particular area. So just start asking yourself questions like, what are they working on with my child? Are they doing lots of different areas, or are they only teaching language? There's so many different things they should be working on, like language, motor skills, social skills, all of their daily living skills. And then at 4, they're still pretty young, but there's a lot of things they could start working on when it comes to executive functioning, some pre-academics, and also some of the perspective-taking type stuff starts to come in at that age. So if you're feeling like, oh, this program's just not really well balanced, it seems like it's lopsided or something like that, perhaps that's the issue. But if that's the case, skills could potentially be something that you might want to talk to your ABA provider about and see if they are interested in checking it out. There's always free trials. It can help them to come up with a curriculum program that has more of a balance. And there's many other curriculum programs out there as well. But to answer your question, I think you should probably just take a look at some of those different questions first and then go from there.
And isn't it true, Dr. Najdowski, that in some of these cases, because a lot of parents write into us and say, I mean, I'm thrilled, this child is 4 and they've been doing ABA for a year. This is a great setup. If it's quality ABA therapy, right? And if it's in the right amount. And you mentioned sometimes it's not the right amount, and sometimes it's not the right amount because the funding isn't there. So let's say that you were talking about that 30 hours, if they have been given 15 hours in terms of their funding, and that's how much they're going to get, couldn't the parents be using skills to provide that other 15 hours themselves?
Exactly, definitely. And we have a lot of parents who do that. So you could definitely do that. You're going to want to communicate very well with your ABA provider so that you're working together and that you're not working on certain things that they're trying to work on and you guys are kind of undoing certain things and all that. So just make sure the communication is very good. But yes, for sure. And if you don't have any background on how to implement ABA procedures, I know you see ABA going on all the time, and maybe it's in your home, or I don't know if you drop your child off at a center and so you don't get to see it. But if you're not familiar with how to implement ABA procedures, then you should also check out the Institute for Behavioral Training, which is ibehavioraltraining.com, because they have e-learning videos that you can watch that will actually teach you how to implement those ABA procedures. And then that way, skills just is a curriculum for you. So now you know how to implement ABA, but you don't necessarily know what you should teach or what exactly your child needs. And that's where skills will help you, because you answer these assessment questions, and they're all based on the age of your child, and then it helps to pinpoint what are the actual things that your child needs to learn to get caught up to their typically developing same-age peers.
Absolutely. And the other thing that comes to mind for me is that, we've said if you're getting ABA at age 4 and you've been getting it for a year, that it's crucial that you be getting quality ABA therapy. And we've talked before with many different experts about what constitutes quality ABA therapy, but I would imagine at this point, if you feel like not enough is getting done, I would want to look at the book and see how often is progress being achieved. Sometimes we get into a thing as a parent where we're in this thing of, well, I want more, I want more, I want more. But if you look at the charts and see all the things that your child is mastering, you might feel better. Or if you see that your child isn't mastering targets on a regular basis, it's time to ask some questions about
I kind of feel like as a parent, you know your child really well, and if you're kind of feeling like something is not right or they're not getting enough, then you're probably right, don't you think?
I do. I mean,
why would you question it,
Right.
Like, something doesn't sit right with you.
I do. I will say that when Jem, in the year that he went from being 3 to 4, I was so caught up in this, we have to get him to 5 and we have to get him ready and we have to get ready, that I lost track of how much progress he was making. And when I finally got it when he was 4 was in that 1 year, we had a meeting with the school and they said, here is the placement we want to offer to him. And it was a room where they had kids with helmets on that were hitting their head against the wall. That was what they felt was appropriate for my nonverbal child who was 3. And a year later, right before his 4th birthday, when we had the same meeting, a year later, they said, oh, well, we want to offer you complete inclusion in this preschool, and that he'll go there for an aide. We went from the lowest placement to the highest placement.
That's really good.
My child was verbal and talking in sentences. And I get chills now thinking about it, and I went, we did that in a year.
That's amazing.
And in the middle of it, I was like, when is he going to do this? When is he going to ask the why questions? When is he going to do, I was just crazy.
But did you question whether you were doing enough? Did you know you were doing all you could?
Yeah, well, no, because I didn't know. But I was like, I was constantly driving our supervisor crazy saying, what else, because you're so aware of this window. And I didn't, that's why I love the A word, because you can watch and see where they're going. And I didn't know. I hadn't read the end of the book yet. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was worried that I was going to miss something, because I saw other parents.
That makes sense. I could actually see that.
But, so sometimes I think it is just the fear, but a lot of times I'm with you that a parent's instinct is important, and you should follow up on it always.
Yeah.
Follow up on, look at the book, see, and I think I actually went home that day after they said, yeah, we're giving him the highest placement, and said, show me everything we've learned in this year. And I saw all these targets that were mastered, and went, wow, we really did something this year, didn't we? And that's when I started referring to it as the autism miracle in my living room.
Well, the truth is every single minute of your child's waking hours is a learning opportunity. So anytime that they're interacting with you or anyone else, there's a way that you can do that they can actually learn something. So if you're not doing that during your free time when you're with your child, and there's certain points where you have to do stuff too, but then start looking into maybe asking for parent training from your ABA provider. Start finding out what can you be doing at home as well to supplement what's going on.
I think that's a really good idea, because there is always more that we can do.
Yeah.
But also want to say to you, awesome, as Dr. Najdowski said, kudos to you that you've already got ABA in place and had it in place for a year. Sometimes that can be one of the most overwhelming steps. You're doing a great job.
Yes, good job.
We're going to take a break and come back with more of your questions for Dr. Adel Najdowski. This is Real Progress with Dr. Adel. Stick with us.
Skills is an online program that provides assessment, curriculum, positive behavior support planning for challenging behavior, and progress tracking, and it does this all in one place. The skills assessment and curriculum addresses 8 areas of development, which even includes advanced higher level areas such as executive functions and cognition, which pretty much makes skills the only ABA-based set of curricula for teaching more complex skills, things like problem solving, planning, self-management, perspective taking, and even inferring and predicting others' private events. Skills is a 4-step system. Step 1 is to add the child to your account. Step 2 is to start assessment. The skills assessment is the only ABA-based assessment with psychometric research demonstrating the language subscale to have excellent reliability. Every area of human functioning and typical child development from infancy to adolescence was researched, making the skills assessment the most comprehensive of its kind in the world, and we're quite proud of that.
Skills is easy to use. Simply click Start Assessment and begin answering questions. Or simply type in a keyword, find specific activities to assess, and add activities to treatment. Step 3. Choose activities. Once you've completed the assessment, Skills selects from a pool of 4,000 activities categorized by age, level, and skill type to provide you with exactly those activities each child needs. Start by choosing a curriculum, then a lesson, and finally an activity. Click the information icon to view prerequisites, ages in which targets develop, examples, and IEP goals. Click the video icon to watch a short video. Once you've identified an activity you want to teach, adding activities to treatment is a snap. Step 4. Start treatment. Here you can access customizable activity lesson details, add your own customized targets and exemplars, and edit an activity status such as introducing or mastering it. You can even print handouts such as worksheets, tracking forms, visual aids, and other materials. Skills also offers multiple progress charts mapping curriculum progress, lesson progress, and cumulative number of activities and targets mastered over time. The Skills language curriculum is categorized by verbal behavior type so that users can identify progress for verbal operants, such as echoics, mans, tax, and interverbals.
Skills is one of the only programs that provides the ability to write behavior intervention plans, or BIPs, for challenging behavior.
With just a few clicks, the outline of the behavior intervention plan is written for you and ready to be printed and implemented.
You can learn more about Skills today and get started by visiting us at www.skillsforautism.com, or you can call us at 877-975-4559. Skills. Progress starts here.
Welcome back to Autism Live. In the studio with us right now is Dr. I'm a huge fan of hers. She is the Director of Dissemination and Research for Skills and also one of the co-creators of Skills. She is an amazing doctor who has been working in the field of autism for quite a while. Your face belies how much experience you have because you look like a youngin', but you have done so much work in this field, and we thank you for all the work that you've done. And she's here answering your questions. So we had a question that's kind of lengthy. We'll try to get to it quickly here. My son is 3 and just started school. He goes full-time every day, which is for 6 hours, 5 times a week. He is verbal and knows how to ask for his needs, and even when he is hurt, but not conversational, she stipulates. Now, I just want to know, should I be doing some other type of therapy? OT, ABA, speech. After school, I do some work at home. She says, I guess it's considered ABA. I'm no professional, but I'm constantly asking him, trying to question him, trying to make conversation and redirecting him when needed. So I'm on his case all the time at home, but I don't know if I should stop and let a professional teach him better. I'm so lost, so confused. It's been 9 months since he's been diagnosed, and he's made a lot of improvement, but I don't know if I'm doing it enough. Again, another question of a parent saying, you know, is it enough?
Right, and I also see in that question she's asking, should I be doing ABA?
Yeah.
Or OT or SLP or whatever.
Right.
And the first thing I have to say is I urge you to do ABA. ABA has been shown over and over again in research to be extremely effective, to the point where it can get children completely caught up to their typically developing peers and in a regular education classroom without an aid. And your child is 3 years old, and if you take these next couple of years and you really focus in on trying to get your child caught up to where he should be for his age, you could have a chance at that. Having him be able to go into a kindergarten classroom or a first grade classroom with everyone else without any supports would be pretty amazing. Now, that doesn't happen all the time, so I don't want to give you false hope. But it's possible, and so I would urge you to go ahead and get ABA. You say you're doing it on your own right now. I would highly suggest that you use professional if you can. You can't always do that, though, so if you don't have funding for it, then definitely do it on your own. And in that case, use tools that are available to help you to train yourself better. So go to the Institute for Behavioral Training and watch their e-learning videos and learn how to implement ABA properly. Go to Skills or find another curriculum out there that exists to help guide the treatment plan that you're working on. You need to be focused in on specific targets that your son needs to get caught up, rather than just randomly picking things. The goal here is time of the essence and use it wisely. He doesn't necessarily need to be going to school for 30 hours a week when he's 3 years old. Preschool is kind of an optional thing. I would look at preschool as more of a social situation. Okay, I want to get him caught up, but I also want him to socialize. But if he can't even have a conversation, then why is he over here for 30 hours hanging out with these kids that he can't even converse with? Give him some skills and then let him go practice them for a few hours a week at the preschool. So you might want to readjust your plan a little bit, but it really kind of depends on how far behind he is. And I don't know if you've had an assessment done, but you should really try to figure out he's 3, but what level is he functioning at, and what is going to be needed to get him caught up to where he would be at his same age peer level.
Yeah, and I think, you know, one of the first questions you want to be asking, and that if I would be asking you, where do you live? Because let's find out what you have funding for. Because if you've got funding to do a fully funded ABA program at this point in time, there is no earthly reason why that shouldn't be your top priority. We understand, I think both of us understand, that it can be debilitating financially or impossible if you don't have the funding, and then you want to look for how can I get as far along there as I can. But if you already have the funding, and over 50% of you watching do, and some of you don't even know it, that you have access to now, people have fought for you to have access to what is the gold standard in treatment, ABA.
Yeah, figure out if you have health insurance, does your health insurance cover this? And don't just call up the health insurance company and ask them, because sometimes they literally don't know.
It's
We're
true.
at a transitional phase right now with health insurance. You call them, and the person you get on the phone might not even realize that they insure that now, because that's how new it is. So do your research. Look online to find out which states have the mandated health insurance. If you're one of those states, then start really pushing to figure out if you have it or not.
And one of the things too, and we had Rice Myler on the show earlier this week, and that's a great interview that you can go back and watch. But you know, she suggested talking to your HR person and have them chase it down with your insurance. And we also asked her about, we've started saying to people, you know what, find your ABA provider. Go to your local support group and say, which ABA provider should I be working with? And then call the ABA provider and say, I want to be working with you. Can you see if my insurance will cover it? And that most quality ABA providers will be willing to do that for you.
That's a good point. Like at CARD, for example, I know there's been cases where they've contacted the insurance and basically told the insurance, no, you cover this. And then the insurance says, oh, we do? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then the next thing you know, it's all good. But they don't even realize it.
Yes.
We're really far behind right now with the education of even people necessarily in the insurance industry knowing that this is covered.
Yeah.
It's so that new. So.
But I want to drill home the fact that over 50% of you watching have access to that, and you may not even know. We have New York families that the law just changed again about a month and a half ago, and there are families that thought they had it, then they found out they didn't have it, and you have it now. So don't tire of asking. Don't give up.
And what are the best websites that you recommend for people to go to? Like, I always used to go to autismvotes.org, because that lists which states actually have the mandated insurance. But do you have any other ideas?
Well, I like, usually when you guys write to me and I write back to you and say, where do you live? One of the first places that I do is I check overall. I go to Autism Speaks and I go to the advocacy page, and that's where you can now find that Autism Votes calendar that gives you the idea of what the states are. It tells you.
Okay.
I wish I would say, I wish that it would tell you comprehensively, because each state it covers a little bit different. I wish I knew what the caps are and what the ages
it's different.
are.
Yeah, no, there's no way you're going to know that.
And the Autism Speak site doesn't do that. I wish that they would. But then from there, one of the things that I usually do is I go to bacb.com and I put in the zip code of where you guys live, and I look at and see who all the BCBAs are, and then I compare it with the Autism Speak site with their resources page for that zip code, and match up, okay, this person works for this agency, so that I know who the BCBAs are and what the agency is. But then the next step is to go to the local parent support group. You go to Facebook and put in search autism and whatever the closest city is. And chances are on Facebook or Cafe Mom or Yahoo groups or Google groups, you're going to find a group, and then you put the question to them and say, I'm aware of these 3 or 4, who do you guys recommend? And take a sampling of at least, I would say, between 5 and 8 sets of parents who are saying, yes, this is good ABA therapy.
Yeah, and in fact, they might even be able to help you to figure out if your insurance covers things, because they've done a lot of research themselves.
I'm telling you, parents are willing to help other parents, and sometimes, they'll spend more time with you. They have more time to give you than experts. They certainly are going to give you more time than insurance people or your HR person, and they know how important it is. People did that for me, and now I try to do that for other people, and I'm not the only one. There are thousands of us that feel it's important to pay it forward. But find out the answer to that component, because if you have funding for the best possible thing, it would be almost criminal to not treat yourself to that and treat your child to that. So,
and the other thing is if your child's going to continue to go to preschool, and you do get ABA covered, you might even be able to get a shadow at the preschool, which would basically then facilitate your child using their skills better in that environment. And there's certain preschools that are going to be better than others also. Some preschools have people already trained. Some preschools don't necessarily have that, but they're really open to being trained, or they're really open to having you bring in your own personal, private, shadow or whatever. And a shadow doesn't mean they have to be right next to your child either. They can be more like a helper of the classroom, but they're always facilitating interactions for your child and helping them to respond correctly and all of that. You just want to make sure if they're going to preschool, you're using the time the best you can.
Okay, great advice. We're going to take another short break and be right back after these messages. Stick with us.
Hey guys, for the month of September, I figured I'd show you guys how to make a task completion chart to help your kids get through the hardest parts of the day. Parents have been writing into our host, Shannon Penrod, the hardest parts of the day are waking up in the morning, after school, and getting ready for bed. Please keep in mind you can always modify the task completion chart to focus on the skills that your family needs most. The template we'll be using today to make the task completion chart you can find at facebook.com/autism-live. All right, let's get to it. The materials you'll be needing are the template, cardstock, scissors, hole puncher, glue, pipe cleaner, Velcro, and photos or images. We find it more reinforcing for kids if you use images of themselves doing the tasks that you're trying to get them to complete. So what I have here to start off are photos of myself doing all the tasks that we're going to add to our task completion chart today. The first step you're going to be doing is printing the template from facebook.com/autism-live. I have it here, and the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna trim at the top. We don't need that, that's just totally excess. Now that I trim my 3 templates, I'm gonna label each one with a different part of the day that we're focusing on, such as waking up, after school, and getting ready for bed. Now that I finished labeling the templates with the appropriate time of the day, I'm gonna attach the photos that go with it. For bedtime, the tasks I chose were getting ready for school, putting away toys, putting on pajamas, and brushing teeth. Now repeat this for all the rest of the day. Now that I've added the photos to the template, I am taking this along with my heavy cardstock to hold all my tokens. I'm gonna line them up and make 3 hole punches. I'm gonna take this pipe cleaner and attach the pages together with it. We're almost done putting this together. Next, I'm gonna take my Velcro, I'm gonna put them underneath each picture. And then I'm gonna add 4 on the very edge too. Now that I've attached the rough side of the Velcro to the template, now I'm gonna take the softer side and add these to the tokens. You can use whatever you want for the tokens, whatever your child finds reinforcing. They could be stickers, images, spacemen, Pokemon, whatever they like. Before you use your task completion chart, it's really important that you do a preference assessment to see what your child finds reinforcing that day. Once you have that established, then you can tell them the rule for how this task completion chart works. So every time they get one of their tasks completed, they add a token to it. And the way the task completion chart functions is like a token economy. So after they put a token under each one of these tasks, they can trade it in for their reinforcer for the day. Now that you've made your task completion chart, hopefully your child will be able to use it on a daily basis and help them through those difficult times of the day. Well, until next time, craft on. Bye, guys.
Can you see me flying by your side?
Welcome back to Autism Live. We have with us Dr. Adel Najdowski. She is the Director of Dissemination and Research for Skills and also one of the co-creators of the Skills program. And we had a skills question came in that somebody wants to know they have a high-functioning child and they've heard about skills. Their question was, we really want to work on social skills. Is that something that we can do with skills? They've heard that it's a comprehensive, all these different curricula. Can they just use it for social skills?
Yes, definitely. That's one of the 8 curriculum domains that are within the skills program. And because it hasn't been pulled out separately and marketed in that way, sometimes I think it gets lost in the shuffle as like, oh, well, that's just a, regular key skills program or something like that, like a typical ABA program. But in reality, it has an entirely very comprehensive social skills program. We use lots of different social skills assessments when we were designing it to come up with all the different targets we would need. And so yes, absolutely, if you have a child who is in need of just simply social skills training, you can use skills, and you do not have to necessarily use any of the other 7 domains, so you can just ignore those.
And it really targets those high-functioning social skills. When I read through that curriculum, there were things that I personally wanted to work on. I say that, and I'm not kidding at all. There were things, there's a lesson in there about ending conversation that I am working on right now for myself, not with my child, for myself.
I have to be honest with you, when we were creating it and stuff, there were certain times where I was like, I'm learning a lot from this about what I could do better as well.
So if you're thinking that it's a program that's just for children on the spectrum and just for 5-year-olds, I really want to caution you that is incorrect. These are high-level skills that are very targeted and very informative.
Yes.
It's a remarkable thing that you guys have done. I thank you so much. We are out of time, but it's always a pleasure to have you here and have you answering our viewers' questions. We're going to take a break and go to the A word right now. This is the ongoing documentary being made here by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, following one little boy who was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2 on his journey getting that intensive early ABA therapy in his home. It is an amazing series. Take a look. This is the A word.
I know a cute little blue-eyed boy, and his name is Jack. Jack Riley. He got a big, warm, blue-eyed soul that makes your heart beat fast. Exciting. I say Jack, Jack, Jack is my buddy. Jack is my buddy. Everybody around is so down with Jack.
I'm Christine, and I've been with CARD for 2 weeks now.
Hi, I'm Jessica. I'm a senior therapist on the case.
I'm training, and I have an overlap with Jack Riley today. This is my third overlap.
For training new therapists, they normally do 20 hours of training at the office or e-learning.
E-learning is video clips, basically preparing you for overlaps, preparing you for how to do programs.
And then they do about 8 to 9 overlaps in the field to get a hands-on feel of the therapy training that they learned and to work with a child one-on-one. So like the first overlap would be them just purely just observing, and then as the overlaps go on, the therapist is given opportunities to actually do the programs, do behavior interventions on their own. So which one did you want to do?
I want to do this one.
Locations. Okay. Yeah, so it's still a math trial, so do errorless learning for that one.
How long has he been doing fire station?
This would be his 4th time.
Where do you see a fire hose at a fire station?
At a fire station.
So it has a hand?
Fire hose is
Where do you see a fire hose?
A fire station.
Good job.
After 8 or 9 overlaps, they do a field eval. And that includes the therapist actually running the whole session purely on their own without any help from us. And when they pass, then they get put on schedules and get put to work with other kids. And if they don't pass, then they do more training and then they take the field eval again.
Where do you see a fire truck? Can you look at me, Jack Riley? Where do you see a fire truck?
At a fire station.
Good job.
So like from there with the fading of prompts, that was great. So you prompted in full verbal, partial verbal, and then yeah. Okay.
Welcome back to Autism Live. That was The A Word, an ongoing documentary being made here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. And that was Jack Riley, a lovely, lovely little boy who has really, his entire family has allowed us to come in with cameras and take a look at what's going on. And you can see that Emily's got up there right now the YouTube page where you can go and watch the entire series. And I encourage you to do that. There's so much to be learned. I was saying earlier with Dr. Najdowski that when I was going through ABA, and especially if you're using skills, you really want to take a look at this because they're using skills with Jack Riley. The therapist and his case supervisor, they are using skills. That's what all the lessons that they do with him is from the skills program. And I felt like when my child was getting therapy, I really was all in. I had seen the studies and I knew how effective ABA could be. I knew that we didn't know what our outcome was going to be, but I really was all in about, let's do this and I want to learn this and I want to be able to do this. And very quickly I saw how effective it was at helping my child to learn. And then I was, even more than all in, I was like a crusader trying to tell people about it. Still am. And, but I didn't always know where the car was going. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes I learn better, and it's one of the reasons why I became a teacher ultimately. I learned better from watching other people learn, if that makes sense. And my mother came to visit, and our outside family, when they come into our home and really see what we're doing, they go, this is odd, this is strange. If therapists coming to the door and you go in the other room and you're watching on the monitor, and what are they doing with your kid, and why are they teaching him in this way? It all seemed very foreign to my mother, and she had a lot of judgment about it. We used to say that my mother would sit there and make buttonholes. She was sitting there, she and I went into the other room and we were watching on the monitor as they were working with Jem, and she was, her lips, she was making buttonholes. She was just like, I just don't understand what they're doing. And I was explaining it to her, and in explaining it to her, I began to understand it even better myself. And it was a really amazing week, and I have some of it on videotape, actually, that I should bring in at some point. But they were teaching him different, I believe it was functions of different things, and or features of different things. So they started on the Monday and they were showing him a picture of a car, and they had already worked through the fact that a car is a vehicle, and they put all these different things into the category. First he learned, this is a car, this is a van, this is a truck, this is a dump truck, right? And he learned that weeks ago. Then we put it into, this is a car is a vehicle and a dump truck is a vehicle, and, you know, all these different vehicles. And it was hysterical to listen to my son sitting at the table saying, you know, they would say, what's a car? And he would say, a car is a vehicle, right? It was so sweet. And then eventually they started breaking it down even further about, you know, what are these things on the car? They're doors, and teaching him that a car has doors. And then they would go on to other things. So on the Monday, they were teaching him that a car has doors, that's something, a car is a vehicle, and a car has doors. So, and you go, okay, how useful is that, right? And then, you know, in the afternoon session, they would show a picture of something else and say, you know, what is this? This is an airplane, and, you know, what does it have? You know, it has a door, and it has wings, and it has wheels, and all these different things. And so we got to the point where it was Thursday of this week where they were teaching all these things, and our therapist, Peter Farrig, and I have this on videotape, and I have other people working with him to get this so that by the time we get to Thursday, they showed him a bird, and they were working on the fact that a bird has wings. And but they said, you know, what is this? And he said, it's a bird, and a bird has wings, just all on his own with no prompting. And everybody erupted into, my mother was dancing in the other room, I was dancing in the other room, because it was that moment of, oh my goodness, he gets it. And by the way, he did get it then. He'd gotten all these examples, right, all week long that they'd worked on in this very specific way, but in that moment where he got it, oh, a bird has wings, then they could show him a picture of anything, things that he hadn't done before, and he could describe them suddenly. So they could say, you know, here's a picture of this, you know, here's a cat, and tell me about a cat. And he would say, a cat has whiskers, and a cat has eyes, and a cat has a tail. You know, and because he was starting to see things globally. And my mother, you know, she just said, I've never seen anything like this. In the beginning of the week, I was like, what are they doing with him? It's just crazy. What are they doing with him? They're taking up all of his time showing him pictures of things and having him label things. How is that going to be useful in life? But then that was on Monday. Then on Thursday, she went, oh my goodness, they just turned on the lights in his brain. They just turned on the lights, and he sees things, and he's taking them in for the multifaceted things that they are. Oh, how exciting. So I encourage you, if you feel like, oh, I don't know how these individual lessons and skills, how does this add up to something? Watch the A Word. See how it would be like being in my house for my mother. You see how, oh, that's how they teach that. And that's, oh, look at how that changes over time and what that develops into and the skills that it blossoms into. It's a very exciting thing. And you begin to see this is truly amazing, how we teach kids how to learn. A very exciting thing. It's that I do the angel noise for... For Emily, I was doing the, you know, it's a fabulous thing, and the angels go, ah, right? So I encourage you oh, Emily said it was a bad angel noise that I just did. I'll work on it during the break. But in any case, you get what I mean. I've disappointed Emily. It's a bad Friday. But we're going to take a break, and we'll come back with more of Autism Live after these messages. Stick with us.
Nick was diagnosed with autism in 1994 at the age of 4. He received 5 years of therapy from CARD that eventually faded out. Nick recovered from autism in 2001.
The song I'm about to perform is by the Red Hot Chili Peppers. CARD helped many patients, myself, to recover to this level now.
Cheryl and Mike's son, Jack Riley, was diagnosed with autism in 2010 at age 2. He's been receiving therapy from CARD for a year and a half. Today, Cheryl, Mike, and Nick meet for the first time.
I'm curious as to what you remember.
I certainly remember pretty long sessions, and I'd be frustrated if I would make mistakes. I mean, I remember one time I had to count a row of 6 blocks, kept messing up. That was really difficult.
No.
I need it, but I need it.
At what point do you recall hearing the word autism?
I was able to figure out what I was going through without anybody having to tell me.
Our concern is if it's a big secret to hide. I don't know what we can say.
No one ever told you, you just discerned
But the
it?
reason I'm comfortable talking about this is because I felt it. In therapy, I certainly began questioning why people reacted as they did based on what I said and did. Particularly because of difficulties I was facing in school. It got to a point where I wanted to understand why it was. So I entered while still going through therapy and still showing significant signs of the mental condition. Even after I'd improved to a significant extent, there were those who still gave me a hard time for it.
Did it hurt your feelings when you were in school? The way that kids...
Oh, absolutely, because it was bullying, it was harassment.
That scares us.
They called me names. I was basically, when it came to sports and PE, I was usually the last kid chosen.
Did teachers intervene?
Fortunately, not really. I mean, it was just so hard for me to talk about it because of how ashamed I felt. Certainly the first few years of elementary school, I don't think I really had the most supportive teachers. I mean, I remember my mom told me how my first grade teacher once said that she thought I had no chance of getting anywhere. And going away to college and out of state and being the only person from my old school district has made a difference. And it's just really improved my social life tremendously because I got to be me, because with nobody knowing about my past, I wasn't faced with these misconceptions and prejudgments.
Do you tell new people that you meet?
No, that's not the first thing I will ever
No, I would
tell
hope it's not the first thing.
You know what? In most cases, I never do, because while it's a part of my past, it doesn't define who I am. I mean, just thinking back to the very beginning, pretty much each episode, autism, what, not who.
I want to tell you right now, though, I'm so impressed with you.
Likewise.
I want you to know that.
Likewise. I mean, your son really inspires me just as much, because I'll tell you, anytime
I adore him, but I'd be lying if I said it wasn't challenging.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
it's cost me the stuff that like career things, goals. I don't care about those anymore. I work at night. I'm tending bar. Not that I'm too good for that. I'm just saying that's what I do. I want him to have a chance.
Right.
And you inspire me now.
Thank you. The feeling goes both ways. The feeling's mutual.
Before you leave today, we would like you to meet Jack.
I would love to.
This is Nick.
Hi, Nick.
Hey, Jack Riley.
All right, should we try this? I'm gonna try to take a picture of all of you. 1, 2, and 3.
Jack Riley, you rock.
Welcome back to Autism Live. It's Friday, and on Friday we try to do a funding tip for you. And my tip for funding this week is about what your time is worth. And this goes on a very broad scale, what your time is worth and what your child's time is worth. There were parents that, right when my son was diagnosed and when we found out about how effective ABA was and we made the decision to do ABA, it certainly was and can be a financially devastating thing because you're putting your time and your energy in a certain place. But this is something that's all relative, right? And I remembered one family put it in context for me, and they said, well, we were saving, and a lot of his grandparents put money into an account for his college. But if we don't help him now, he's probably not going to go to college. So we're going to take his college fund and we're going to spend it right now. And that was the decision that they made. And I thought that made great sense. My child didn't have a college fund. You know what I'm saying? And there weren't grandparents alive to start a college fund. But I thought it was a great way of looking at it as if I'm going to save this money for something down the road, what are my priorities? Evelyn Gould always comes in and talks to us about, what is our moral compass and what's important to you? I always talk about the fact that my husband and I have like a personal manifesto for our marriage of what are we here for? What are we trying to work on? What's important to us? And it really helps with those funding decisions decisions, because you start to think about, what is my time actually worth? And how do I want to put my focus, and what kinds of things do I want to focus time on? Because is it efficient for what I find to be important to me in terms of my morals and my ethics? And is it having a good payoff for me financially? We made the decision to fight for a 40-hour ABA program in our home. It took a great deal of my time and energy. We were able to do it without a lawyer bill. I think that that's not the norm. I think most people have to pay for a lawyer to do what we did. And, you know, it was certainly under discussion for us. If I had had the money, we would have spent the money on a lawyer, but I spent time instead and got myself educated about what the legal constraints were. I probably spent as much of my time as we would have spent if I, you know, if the job that I had been working would have, and used it for the lawyer, is what I'm trying to say. So you really have to weigh and say, you know, what is the cost in my time? What is the cost out of pocket? And what is the benefit from each of these things? But by spending that amount of time, we were able to get access to hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of therapy over years. Now, was that worth it for all of the entities that provided the funding ultimately and the time that I spent? Well, my son, you know, and a lot of people can make an argument and say, no, it's not worth it. If it's going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of therapy over several years, then, you know, who can afford that in this economy? But the reality is that if we had not gotten that therapy, there's no possibility that my son would have been an independent adult. He was not on track to do that. He was completely nonverbal. And as I said yesterday, you don't outgrow autism. And we had tried a bunch of different things at home. I was a teacher. None of that was going to work. So my son would have ended up being a burden on society for his entire life. And over the course of his life, it's estimated that that would be at least $2.3 million of a cost to taxpayers, in addition to what it would have cost his father and I. So if we're talking about spending $300,000 on something as opposed to $2.3 million, even though the numbers are huge and they make my head spin, clearly spending $300,000 was better for everyone than spending $2.3 million. So I ask you to get your head wrapped around the bigger numbers here and the bigger issues for you in terms of what's important to you and how much you value your time and how much time you have for your child. That for some of these parents that you're writing in and you're saying, I've got a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old, and a lot of times myself and the other experts are urging you very strongly, saying you really need to get your child into a quality ABA program, and you got to figure it out funding wise. And I'm telling you, you're going to have to spend some time fighting for those funds. But I'm going to promise you that if you follow through on it, you're going to learn a lot that's going to be useful to you. You will have some success. You absolutely will. Sometimes it's exhausting and sometimes it feels like it's never going to happen, but you will have some success if you plug on, because it's the right thing to do, and usually right wins. Even if you have to take it to a court, usually, not always, but usually right wins if you keep plugging at it long enough. And it will be worth it. I tell you that from the heart, that I believe that it'll be worth it. You've got to decide that for yourself. But I urge you to fight for, spend some of your time. If it means that you've got a little less time to work, I think it will be worth it in the end. I really do. That's a hard choice to make. And there were parents who made the choice when we fought for and got the 40-hour program for our child, parents who said, we both have to work, we can't do that. I'm just going to put our child in a daycare. We're going to hope for the best. And I'm able to look at the outcomes for both situations and see that they have heartache over the fact that they didn't get their child caught up, and we were able to get our child caught up. I promise you, it's worth it. It's absolutely worth it. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to be joined by Dr. Jonathan Tarbox, and we call this Science Beat with Dr. Tarbox. We've got a lot of questions to ask him, but keep them coming in on the live feature. We'll be right back after these messages. Another parent wants to know, how do I find out that one thing that my kid is really good at?
Now, when they get older, they're going to kind of divide into two groups. You're going to have the kids that become verbal, and then you're going to have the kids that are nonverbal, got many more problems. Maybe they still have epilepsy or some other problem. And they kind of need different services. And the ones that get verbal, what we need to be doing with them is develop the area of strength. And that area of strength often will show up around 3rd or 4th grade, sometimes earlier, but my ability in art showed up when I was in 3rd and 4th grade, and it was always encouraged. And I was encouraged to do lots of different kinds of art. Otherwise, it would have just been endless horse heads. You know, Mother would say to me, why don't you draw a picture of a beach or something else? You want to broaden it out. If the kid's fixated on trains, let's teach reading with trains, math with trains. Tap into that fixation, but develop the area of strength. Some kids it's going to be art. Other kids it's going to be mathematics. So you got a 3rd grader who's smart in math, and he wants a 6th grade math book. Give him the 6th grade math book. Don't bore him with the baby stuff. But that kid's going to have trouble with reading, because the common thing is the uneven skills. And then you have the kids that are the history buffs, and these kids are often really good at writing skills. You tend to have uneven skills, but tap into their fixations and use those to motivate, but broaden. If he likes trains, just watching them, well, we're going to take that interest in trains to do some math with it, or maybe read about the history of the railroad. You know, tap into that motivation. One of the things I really want to talk about is we got to stretch these kids. I'm not talking about physically stretching them, mentally stretching them to do new things. I'm seeing too many kids that haven't learned how to shop, how to order food at McDonald's. So you start out, let's say it's ordering food at McDonald's or at Burger King. So you take them up there and they watch you order it. And then eventually you go in when the store's not busy, and they have to go up and order it while you're sitting at the table watching, and then you coach them. And then eventually they can go in the restaurant themselves. I can remember I was scared to go to the lumber yard alone and buy lumber. And Mother made me go. And she knew I could do it. I had bought lumber with her many times. But there's a tendency to want to have somebody else there when they do it, and they've got to learn how to do things alone. And you gradually have got to kind of push it. You've got to stretch them. And I'm seeing too many kids not learning basic skills. Saw a 19-year-old honor student that actually knows how to drive that had never shopped in the grocery store all by herself. That is just ridiculous. You know, you've got to stretch them. You push too hard, there can be panic. And the other thing is no surprises. No surprises. I knew all about the ranch long before I went there. I'd talked to Ann. But if you don't stretch these kids, they don't grow.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We are thrilled to have with us Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. He is the head of research and development at the the head of research and development at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and you are the director of the Autism Research Group.
That's correct.
It's a mouthful. Sometimes it's hard for me to get all of that up and out, but so thrilled to have you here. We call this Science Beat with Dr. Tarbox because a lot of times you give us the background science on things when it's applicable. So we've been talking all week long about tantrums and meltdowns.
Okay.
And I know that you have extensive experience working with children on the autism spectrum, and you know that there is this preconceived notion amongst some parents and some people that, you know, kids with autism are just going to have meltdowns and we just have to accept it and move on and, you know, move into that phase of our lives where we just kiss everything else goodbye. And I know you don't subscribe to that, that no one really should subscribe to that. That's horrible information. And we had a parent who wrote in and said, how can a parent prevent meltdowns?
Okay, great question. So first of all, I'd like to echo sort of what we often say on your show, which is challenging behavior and severe behavior is not an inevitable part of the autism diagnosis, right? Challenging behaviors are very common for folks on the autism spectrum, but it is not part of the diagnosis. And challenging behavior is not caused by autism, okay? So that's the important sort of starting point, right? And of course, as we always talk about, challenging behaviors occur for a reason. They're not caused by autism, they're not caused by the brain, they're not caused by your genetics. They happen for a reason, and the reason why they happen is because they help the individual access what they need or what they want in their life, in the moment. And, you know, this seems crazy maybe to folks who aren't familiar with that approach, but the basic idea is all challenging behaviors serve some kind of communicative function. So the bottom line is, if the kid's having a meltdown, he's trying to tell you something.
Yeah.
And some kids have the language to tell you, but they still have meltdowns, and that could be because when they use the language, it doesn't work, right? They don't get what they want, and so they'll go to the meltdown, and or they have the language, but they don't use it, and they don't even know how to use it really, even though they can technically talk and they can say what they want to say, or you know, they know how to say it, but they don't do it. And then, of course, even in cases where there's a medical problem that the meltdown is related to. Let's say the kid has really bad gastrointestinal issues. He has diarrhea, or he has the flu, or something like that. Even if that's the reason why he's having the meltdown, that's still the meltdown is, I don't feel good. Leave me alone, basically, right?
Yeah, you do what you need to do to get the job done.
That's right, exactly.
Quite honestly. And that's not just kids on the autism spectrum, that's all of us.
That's exactly right. And so if someone took your or my language away, let's say with a gag or a blindfold or whatever else, and we weren't able to use words, we would start using other behaviors too, right? We'd try to write it down, we'd try to type it, but if all of those things were not an option, eventually we would resort to screaming, hitting, kicking, biting, you know.
I mean, I think I've told you before on the show, I've talked about it before on the show, that a year ago when we went school shopping with my husband and my son, and neither one of them was listening to me, and I'd had a day, right? Neither one of them was listening to me, and it was a lot of bending over, and it was very uncomfortable for me, and my son wasn't helping, and my husband wasn't helping. He was checked out, looking at other things, and I had asked like 4 or 5 times, and then I raised my voice in the store and said, somebody needs to start listening to me, and neither one of them was listening to me, and so I laid down in the middle of the store and said, I'm laying right here until somebody starts listening to me. I just did the full-on, this is where I'm going to be. I know. I just laid down in the middle of the store and I said, that's it, I'm done. I've had
your own little meltdown.
I had my own, but I wasn't yelling or screaming at that point. I just went, that's it, nobody's listening to me, you're not going to listen to me, okay. And it embarrassed my husband to the point that it was not good. And my son was like, what are you doing? Get up. And I said, nope, you're not going to listen to me. I'm done. And I am a grown you-know-what adult. So, but my needs weren't getting met. And so I was going to do what I needed to do. Right. I bring this up because clearly I am verbal. Right. And yet my needs weren't getting met. So I laid down in the middle of a sporting goods store.
Well, there you go. So,
right?
Exactly. So, I mean, that's a perfect example, right? And so basically, to answer your viewer's question, how can we prevent meltdowns? There's kind of 2 ways to look at that. One is, how can we prevent a meltdown at any given point in time? Like, let's say today, I'm about to go to the store, I'm about to go to a restaurant, or I'm taking my kid to school. How can I prevent a meltdown in this moment, right? Mm-hmm. But then a larger question is, how can we decrease meltdowns overall, right? Yeah. So how can I prevent my child from having to resort to meltdowns in the future in general? And the answer to those 2 different questions are different. Should we take the short-term one first?
Yeah, sure. Let's do that.
Okay, so right now we're going to the store, we're going to a restaurant, we're leaving the house, whatever it is, and we want to make sure my kid isn't going to have a meltdown right now or in the next few minutes. So the answer to that is figure out what they're likely to want and give it to them.
Okay.
Before they have a meltdown. Okay. Figure out what your child likely wants and give it to them before they have a meltdown. Okay. Even if they don't ask for it, right? Figure out what they want. And it shouldn't be what you want them to want. It has to be what they actually want. Okay. So, and you know your child better than anybody. If it's, going to the grocery store and they're likely to see a bunch of preferred food that they're going to have a tantrum over, then give them some preferred food before you get to the grocery store so that they're not hungry, so that they just had something that they like, or give them a snack to snack on while you're shopping in the grocery store. Yes. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Yeah. No one's going to yell at you if you bring a healthy snack or even a semi-healthy snack and give it to your child beforehand. If it's you're going to Target and you know your child's going to be screaming and crying because they want you to buy them a toy, have them bring a preferred toy with them that they can play with while you're there. So you're figuring out what they're likely to want, give it to them before they have the meltdown. That's very likely to prevent the meltdown.
And I can just hear parents going, but aren't I just feeding it? But no, I mean you literally stop and think about it and think, oh, I'm saying that there's no battle. Right. I'm catching it beforehand.
Right, exactly right. And
it's brilliant.
Yeah, it's not giving in. It's not giving up. it's saying we're not even going to have that battle.
Right.
You're preventing your child.
Before the child, I think that's key.
Very
that
key.
You've got to give it to them before they say anything about it at all.
Right.
No whining for it.
Right, exactly. Or if they do ask nicely, great,
Yes.
that's fine, great. But don't even really count on that. I mean, if your main objective is prevent the meltdown, then just use your prediction skills. You know your kid better than anybody. Figure out what they're likely to want and give that to them before they want it bad enough to have the meltdown.
Okay, great. So maybe we should take a break and then we'll come back and do the longer one.
Sounds good.
Okay, we'll be right back with Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. Stick with us.
I'm Max Burkholder. Autism is a neurological disorder. It's an epidemic that affects more American children today than pediatric cancer, childhood AIDS, and juvenile diabetes combined. But there is hope. Research proves that intensive treatment can benefit the lives of children with autism and their families. ACT Today is a nonprofit organization that provides funding for families that cannot access or afford the treatment that can help their children reach their highest potential. To learn how you can make a difference and help a child, visit act-today.org.
Welcome back to Autism Live. Our very special guest in the studio is Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. Such a thrill to have you here. Thank you for being here. And for those of you who are just joining us, Dr. Tarbox is the head of research and development at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders and also the director of the Autism Research Group, a great organization. I encourage people to go to your website to have their voice be heard, take a survey that you guys have there, and to let you guys know what kinds of research would be meaningful to them. So if you have ever looked at studies that are done on autism and had any kind of frustration and said, why aren't they doing research on this? You can go to the Autism Research Group and put the topic that you would like to be researched on, and they definitely review that and make their decisions about what you're going to research based on what parents say, correct?
Absolutely.
Well, I think that is very high-minded. I'm thrilled that you guys are on the job. And can I also say, I hadn't planned to say this to you, but there was a terrible, terrible story in the news this last week of a mom who has been a very active blogger and been such a great advocate for her child and reached a point where she didn't think she could go on anymore, and she tried to take her own life and tried to take her daughter's life, and fortunately she wasn't successful in that. But
I didn't know that.
Yeah, in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and it's a very disturbing story, and people have lots of thoughts and emotions about it, and I certainly have had thoughts and emotions about it, and had conversations with people and said to all of you, ask for and get the help that you need when you need it, and sometimes you're going to ask it of people who aren't prepared to give you the help, and you have to ask other people. And we've said all week long on the show, no one is condoning trying to hurt yourself or hurt your child. Of course, that is not an option, right? But we understand how desperate people can be in desperate times. And I have said, when on the worst day, when the worst things were going wrong for me and my child had been hitting me in the head, and this mom had been hospitalized multiple times because of what her daughter had done to her in her violence, and my son, her daughter is 13, my son was 5, and he was hitting me in the head, and I had reached a point where I could not take it anymore. I had reached that critical mass and came to clinic here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders and said to our supervisor, somebody needs to do something because something bad's going to happen. I don't even know what it is, but I need some help, and I need some help today, and we can't leave here until somebody tells me what to do. And they came and got you. and you brought Art Wilkie with you. I'm going to cry, but you guys came, and it made the difference for us. And I don't know that I've ever really thanked you for that.
Well, I'm glad we could be helpful.
Yeah, it was, and I say that to all of you out there because there are people who can be helpful. I mean, you guys spent time, and I wasn't very nice about it on that day. And I talk all the time about how I yelled at Art Wilkie that day when you guys were just trying to help me, and you guys didn't take any offense to it, or you just plowed on. Maybe he did take offense. I don't think Art did. He's not that kind of person. But it made it so that you guys were, worked through it with me and showed me what to do to defend myself without hurting him.
Right.
And then you guys tore it down and started working on over the next couple of weeks, making it so that behavior changed for him. But first, you showed me how to keep myself safe without hurting him, and that was huge. So I thank you for that, and I throw out to other people watching, you got to keep asking until you find the Dr. Jonathan Tarboxes in your life.
Well, and it's people often think, well, I can't get anything done unless I find the best possible doctor or the best possible this or that. But there's a lot of comfort that you can get out of small, just human elements of life on a daily basis. I mean, I'd like to say to your viewers, there are many of your viewers watching right now who are having those same thoughts that they cannot take it. Right? I mean, that is it sounds harsh, but it's a normal part of parenting a child with special needs. A normal part of that is sometimes having the thought, I can't take this anymore. Yeah. It's a normal part.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to say there might not be any parents of kids with severe special needs who haven't had that thought at some point. I mean, it's part of the experience. And yet we're trained in our society to beat ourselves up over our thoughts, right? Like if I'm having this thought, that must mean X, Y, and Z. It must mean I'm a bad parent. It must mean I can't do it. It must mean I wasn't meant to do this. It must mean that, you name it, right? We have all of these stories that we've learned to tell ourselves that are negative and that are anxiety provoking. And frankly, they're not actually based on any reality. It's just verbal behavior that we've learned to talk to ourselves in that way. And the thing is that's also a normal part, unfortunately, of parenting a special needs kid, is you're going to engage in all of that self-talk that is going to hurt you. You're going to do that. You can't escape it. But what you can do is reach out to someone else and just pick one small thing that makes a difference for you personally. Forget even making a difference for your kid. For 5 minutes, pick one thing that can make you feel better, whether it's watching your favorite TV show, whether it's eating some chocolate ice cream, whether it's going for a bike ride, whether it's telling your husband or your kid's older sibling, your turn, I need a break, period. 5 minute break.
We do the tag out.
Right.
Tag out, your turn.
Yeah. And is that going to solve all your problems? No. But can it make your life a little bit better in that moment? Yes. And that's pretty much as good as it gets for humans, right?
Yeah. And that things change over time. If you do enough of the right things often enough, things change for the better.
That's right.
But I wish for all of you that you have the voice to ask for help when you need it. Absolutely. I promised you that we were going to talk about what the long answer was to how do we prevent meltdowns. So let's take one more break and we'll come back and do that. Stick with us.
Hi, I'm Bryce Myler, and I'm the Contracts Director for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I've been here for about 5 years. CARD has several employees with many years of insurance experience, dealing with insurance, dealing with pre-authorizations, dealing with discovering whether there's coverage or not. So we have more experience than any ABA provider that I've ever come across. So for a prospective client, somebody that may be interested in, ABA therapy and what CARD has to offer, we have a special 800 number, and you call that number. They will talk to you about what we have to offer, how ABA works. He'll ask you for the front and back of your ID card, and then we check to see if you do or do not have coverage. If you have coverage for ABA therapy, we try to do whatever we can to set it up where we can bill for you and you don't have to fight with the insurance company every month to get your claims paid. For California residents, we recently did a series of insurance trainings all over the state, and you can click on the link below to watch pretty much the full presentation. It has a lot of information, how you can get your insurance company to comply with what they're supposed to do, understanding the networks, and many other valuable pieces of information.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We have with us here in the studio Dr. Jonathan Tarbox, the head of research and development here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. We've been talking about tantrums and meltdowns, and before you had talked about that a parent had asked, how do I prevent meltdowns? And you said there was a short answer and a longer answer. We covered the short answer. Now we're ready for the longer answer.
All right. So the short answer is what you can do to prevent them in the moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
The long answer is what you can do to solve the overall problem in general.
Okay.
So again, it goes back to the basic assumption that if your child's having meltdowns, it's a way of communicating with you, right? It's not an appropriate way of communicating, but it's communication nonetheless. And so the first step is to always figure out what are they trying to communicate, and that's what a functional assessment is all about. It's generally not something that a parent just does on their own with their kid. It is something that you should get a qualified behavior analyst to do for you. Preferably a board-certified behavior analyst or a licensed psychologist who's trained and has experience in conducting functional assessments for challenging behavior. You start there, you figure out why the kid's having the meltdowns, and then the long-term solution is make sure that your child can get what they want when they're not having meltdowns, and they don't get what they want when they are having meltdowns. And I know that sounds too common sense, right? It sounds like, well, yeah, no duh, we could have thought of that. But really, honestly, 100 years of research on human learning and motivation basically comes down to that. If you want someone to do something, give them what they want when they do it. If you don't want someone to do something, don't give them what they want when they do that.
And that means being consistent, and there's the rub sometimes that's hard to do.
It's extremely hard to do. And you know, here's the other thing too is you know, as parents, when we have kids with challenging behavior, we learn to be afraid of it, honestly, right? We learn to fear that and anticipate it constantly. We know our child's going to have a meltdown when we go to the store, when we go to the restaurant, whatever it is, waiting in line, whatever the triggers are. And we live in fear, right? And we're walking on eggshells, and we're hoping that, you know, we could do whatever we can do to avoid it, to prevent it. But when it comes down to actually doing an effective behavior intervention plan, the opposite is actually what you need to do. Because when the child has a meltdown, it's a learning opportunity. So if you're not doing an effective behavior intervention plan, meltdowns are awful, and they're something to avoid. If you are doing an effective behavior intervention plan, meltdowns are a learning opportunity, and they're good for your kid. Because what they teach them is, that's not going to work. Use your communication, whether it's sign language, whether it's vocal speech, picture communication, you know, a voice output communication device, you name it.
But what's key here, and what I'm hearing you say, is that you're probably going to need an expert, a BCBA, that board-certified behavior analyst that you were talking about, and that functional assessment, because I know for a lot of us that term isn't going to roll trippingly off our tongue. You can ask for an FBA. Think FBI, but you're asking for an FBA. It's like having the FBI come in and figure out what's going on, how do we fix it, right?
That's exactly right.
Ask for the FBA of the BCBA. I know we've tripped into alphabet land, but these letters will help us, and then we'll get the intervention plan so that we know what to do, when to do it, and then those meltdowns become an opportunity. And almost, I mean, one of the things I would think of when we were doing something like that is this is only going to happen a couple of more times because we're doing it right now. So this meltdown right here might be the last one.
That's right. And maybe not the very last one forever, but yes,
for a long time.
If you're doing it right, if you got the behavior intervention plan right, each time that a meltdown happens, it's less likely for another one to happen in the future. So really honestly, I mean, this sounds twisted, but really honestly, each meltdown is good news. It's evidence that what you're doing is working, and that it's less likely to happen again in the future.
And that's exciting.
That's exciting. And what you'll see, of course, is a gradual decrease in the frequency or the intensity of the meltdowns. And then when you see that, that's when you know you've gotten it right.
Great. We're going to take another short break, and when we come back, we have a question from a viewer about a child who's losing skills. So we want to talk to Dr. Tarbox about that. Stick with us.
Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, and this is my son Jem. We're here today at the Home Depot. You might know that Home Depot is famous for giving free classes to adults on lots of things like tiling and other home crafts. Well, they also have free classes for kids as well. It's called the Kids Workshop. We love doing that, don't we, Jem?
Yeah.
It's cool. So come on inside with us and let's do a craft.
Yay.
The Kids Workshop is a program that's been around with Home Depot almost since we've been a company, and it's been developed to allow kids in the community to come in and give them an opportunity to build something, to be able to create something and be able to take just simple wood pieces and put them together with nails and hammers and screwdrivers and then paint them.
So you do this every first Saturday of the month.
Any Home Depot that you go to on the first Saturday of every month between 9 and 12, you can join different associates throughout different stores and build these projects with these kids.
And do they have to do anything beforehand, or can they just show up on that Saturday?
All they need to do is show up. We have all the tools, all the materials that the kids will need. We have aprons that we give to the kids that they can take home and maintain their pins. They get pins on a regular basis for completing projects. With that, they can keep track of how many projects they've done. And
it's all free.
It's all absolutely free, all provided.
Which is wonderful. And Wilson, I have to say, you guys devised this for all kids to be able to do this.
Correct.
What I particularly love about it as an autism mom, it gives my child a place to come and learn a new skill, to socialize with kids of all kinds.
Absolutely. And that's what we're here for. Home Depot is definitely loves to be involved with the community and bring the community in to work with us. That's what we love to do.
Welcome back to Autism Live. In the studio with us, we have Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. So thrilled to have him here. He is the Director of Research and Development here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. Okay, we had a question that came in on the live feature. My question is that as a child on the spectrum grows older, do they gain more autistic behaviors? My son was diagnosed at 2. He had hand-flapping, toe walking, spinning the wheels on cars, and no social. Lately, he has been covering his ears, looking at his hands, spinning. Also, words that he had mastered in the past, like open door is now opa door. Okay. Puzzle is now pua. Excuse me, I gotta scroll down. I keep asking therapists, doctors, and other parents, but the answer is that it's the spectrum. It's the spectrum. You won't know. Please help me understand why he is gaining new bad behaviors and losing some language, even though he has been receiving therapy since he got diagnosed.
Okay. So clearly
Yes.
an alarming situation
Yes.
for that mom.
Yes.
And we empathize with her for sure.
Absolutely.
The main thing to point out, I think, is that it's funny, she echoed just a classic piece of nonsense that parents are told all the time, which is, oh, it's the spectrum, whatever. It's, yeah, of course, you name it, fill in the blank. Of course your kid has, chronic medical disorders. He has autism, right? Of course he has problem behavior. He has autism. Don't worry, he's not really, don't expect him to learn very much in special ed. He has autism, right?
Right.
So yeah, that's ridiculous.
Those are all wrong.
Yeah, those are all wrong. And no matter where your child fits on the spectrum, he or she can learn, right? He or she, their skill and their skill repertoires and behaviors can improve. All children on the spectrum can learn. No matter how severely affected you are, you're not going to decrease skills over time if you're in a supportive learning environment, an environment that really encourages learning and maintenance of skills after they're learned. So there could be a number of things going on here. It's hard to know exactly, of course, without knowing the individual child. But as far as loss of words, it's very likely that there aren't ongoing rules or contingencies that make sure that those words maintain. So for example, a lot of kids, you teach them a word, something like open door or open, and as long as you require them to use the full word before they can get what they want, so if the kid wants the door open because his toys are behind the door, and he says open, and you open the door, and he gets his toys, so he's getting what he wants when he does the behavior, that behavior is going to maintain. It's not going to go away. He's not going to forget the word open, and it's not going to turn to some other word like OPA. However, it's very natural for parents and practitioners and everybody to become a little bit lax, right? Like once a kid learns something, it's very easy to sort of loosen up a little bit on how strict we're being in terms of what we require from the child. So if we find ourselves becoming a little bit more lax, what we might do is give them what they want when they don't really do the full thing that we're looking for. So it's very easy for a kid, or frankly for anybody, everybody to maybe get a little bit lazy and do a little bit less than the full thing, and see if it works, right? So like if you or I start a new exercise routine, over time we will drift and start doing it less and less intense. And if we get away with it, then we'll do that, right? It's the same thing with kids with autism learning language. Over time, if you're not strict with making sure that they really are using the full language that you taught them, they will drift sometimes and go into more approximations of words, or less complete words or less complete sentences. It'll look like regression, but it's not regression. It's just we need to tighten up and be a little bit more strict about what we're really requiring the child to do.
Okay. And now, a couple of things that I want to address here, because to me, there are separate issues here in terms of the child is gaining new, she refers to them as bad behaviors, and I've been taught to say challenging behaviors, so we don't totally quantify them as bad, you know. But let's face it, sometimes that's how you feel about them, right? And then there are things where there's loss of skills. And to me, those things are vastly separate, because as a child progresses and they learn new things, they're going to acquire new ways that they want to try things that are challenging to us.
Absolutely. And so what she describes as autistic behaviors, oftentimes, or a lot of them sound like automatically reinforced or self-stimulatory behaviors or stereotypies. And so usually the way we think about those behaviors, and of course every child and every behavior is different, but usually the way we think about those behaviors is they produce their own satisfaction, they produce their own reinforcement. They're basically like habits or hobbies almost. And so of course kids are going to learn new ways of entertaining themselves. That's totally normal. You and I hopefully learn new ways of entertaining ourselves too. Same thing with kids on the spectrum. And so the best way to combat those sort of more inappropriate stereotypies or self-stimulatory behaviors is to teach the child lots and lots of more appropriate ways to entertain themselves. So it's all about leisure skills. It's all about establishing appropriate toy play or reading, or even watching TV might be better than engaging in stereotypy. Painting, listening to music, anything you can teach your child to do to keep them busy during downtime is absolutely going to decrease the amount of time they spend doing self-stimulatory behavior. And it should decrease the likelihood that they'll develop new stereotypic behaviors, because they already have these other behaviors that are good leisure skills, that produce entertainment.
And so I, as a parent, I'm trying to learn that when my child gains new behaviors that are a challenge to me, that it's usually tied to some sort of growth. Because think of teenagers. Teenagers, they're not regressing into bad behavior, but they grow into bad behavior, right? But then the losing skills is an emotional issue for me, because my child regressed into autism and lost his skills there. So, my cautionary thing that I see here is I see a parent saying, I feel like I'm asking my doctors, my therapists, and the people on the team, and I'm concerned about these things, and they're poo-pooing them. And for me, that's the biggest red flag in the world.
Red flag,
that I want to say to you that everyone that you work with, if you say we've had a regression or a loss of skill, and I think that those two things are different, but anytime that there is a regression or a loss of skill, everybody on your team should be concerned and be looking at the whole thing. And if they're not, I would say to you, parent to parent, they should not be on your team.
If they're not taking it seriously.
So, and if they're just saying that's autism, that's not taking it seriously.
And in fact, that's autism is pretty much never an acceptable response, ever.
Right.
No matter what the question is, well, sorry, that's autism, not an acceptable response. What that means is I have no idea what to do about it. That's what that really means.
So I really want to urge you to not listen to them, to listen to your gut. And if your gut says, I am concerned about these things, and especially with the loss of skills, I will say this, and you can weigh in on too, Dr. Tarbox, if you'd like to, that when my child regressed into autism and started, and it was exactly like how you're describing, that he was saying a full sentence and then it slowly went away, and I went to the pediatrician and said, I'm concerned, and she said, don't worry about it, it'll all come back, right? I lost a lot of time, and later on, what I was told is that when a child loses a skill, it's alarm time, make sure you leave no rock unturned. Go to the pediatrician, check to make sure that everything's going okay. It probably is. It's probably...
Especially before the diagnosis.
Yes.
And if you don't have a diagnosis and your child is learning language and social skills and starts to lose those skills, under about age of 2 or so, between 1 and 2, it's a huge red flag. You need to go immediately to go get assessed. But if your child already has the diagnosis and is learning skills and is in a treatment program and is losing some of those skills, that's an issue of maintenance. And it's an issue of you need to tighten up the treatment program and, frankly, the follow-up that you do as a parent to really make sure that those skills maintain.
Okay.
And you ask your treatment provider, you tell them, give me homework. I want to make sure that my child's skills maintain. Give me a list of 10 things I can do on a daily basis that will make sure that my child's language, when he learns it, doesn't go away. And if your treatment provider says, well, that's autism, or well, don't worry about that, that's when it's time to shop for a new one.
Get a new provider. Okay, thank you so much. You've been fabulous. Great to have you here this week. We're going to take a short break and come back and close out the show, but we'll say goodbye to Dr. Tarbox now, so stick with us.
When Maddie was diagnosed, I'll be honest, I was very ignorant on what autism was. I knew that autism was basically something that hit boys at the age of 2 to 3. They shut down, and sometimes you think of the typical Rain Man movie. And with Maddie, she was doing all the same signs and symptoms of a typical child with autism spectrum disorder.
Stand up.
She didn't even acknowledge us coming into the room. She had barely any eye contact. She didn't interact with her sisters. She didn't really do anything. She just basically lined up her toys, and that was about it. We have a team of 7 volunteers, or 8 now. We have 8 volunteers, including my husband and I. And I'm the team leader, and so I do all the curriculum and get everything ready each week.
Jana was downstairs until 11 o'clock at night working on curriculum, going through 2 different textbooks. And then we, as a group, meet on Monday nights, and we would go through what the curriculum was from Jana. And a lot of times we would go, well, how exactly do you do that? How do you sit her at the table and do this trial base? What Skills has done for us, it's taken that away from Jana trying to figure out the curriculum for one. She can go down, or even our laptop, and she can sit down, and through all these questions, it comes up with the different programs.
At least for me, it was a relief off my shoulders. I was worried that I might be missing something, missing a curriculum that maybe she needs to know, where Skills, they have every possible thing your child needs to know from 0 to 7. They have a program for that.
What noise is this?
Good job! Every program that we did with her, I knew it was specific for what she needed to learn. Because before Skills, it was a lot of, okay, well, is that really age appropriate for a 2-year-old? Because it's not generalized. It's anywhere from 0 to 7. This is what your child needs to know in most manuals you'll find. But for this, okay, yep, she should be learning this. And no, she's not 4 yet. She doesn't need to know that yet.
We are so fortunate that Jana was able to attend a conference put on by CARD that opened the door for Skills, and that there's no looking back for us.
We started using the program in November, and it seemed like by January something just clicked, and she has completely kind of came out of her fog that she was in for quite a while.
I have never read a documented case on any child that has not benefited anything from applied behavior analysis, and now with this new Skills and being, like the E version of ABA, I can't imagine it doing anything harmful to their child. It's nothing but exponential growth for us.
To see her now, it just blows us away. I mean, we call her our little miracle child because in 7 months' time, she's just blossomed into this normal, functioning child, and suddenly, we joke about it all the time, like suddenly we have twins.
If you're even thinking about doing it, do it. Because the absolute worst thing you could do is do nothing at all. And even if you use this program and it's just a single mom or a single dad working in the evenings with their child, this program is going to benefit them. it's going to show you where they are, it's going to show you where they need to go, and it's going to show you what skills and how to get there. It is an online book on how to help recover your child.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We've had an amazing week talking about tantrums and meltdowns, and I wanted to take just a minute here towards the end of the week, it is the end of the week, to remind you that you're not expected to be superhuman. That I have a group of friends that we talk about, well, I want to be super mom, but my cape keeps getting caught in the fan. And you can't have the expectation that you're going to be able to do things perfectly, but we can always strive to learn more, do better, and progress. That really is the key to so much. I remember thinking when my son was first diagnosed that we had so far to go and that I didn't feel like I was up to it, and I was demoralized and didn't know how on earth we were going to pay for it. But we started on the journey, and the journey starts with the first phone call to say to someone, I have questions and I need help. Whoever that is for you, whether it's that you write us and say I have questions, or you go online and start getting those questions answered yourself, but it starts a journey to getting the help and support that you need. And there are challenging days. And in amongst all that, your child or your children continue to grow and take on new behaviors, and some days are better than others, right? But there is progress to be had, and I want to keep reminding all of you that there are good people, really good people who want to help us and want to help our children, who work tirelessly. I work with a great many of them, but they are spread throughout the world. They are not just within arm's reach of me, and I want you to know that you get to see the people within arm's reach of me, but I didn't know where they were until I reached my arm and chances are that if you reach your arm out, you're going to be able to reach some of them as well. I hope that you will ask for the help that you need and keep asking until you get the answers that you need, and use us in the way that helps you best to be able to do that. I want to talk a little bit about next week because we won't be here again on Monday, but then and part of it for this weekend is that I'm having a little birthday this weekend, so I will not be here on Monday. But we will be back on Tuesday, and we've got some amazing guests lined up for you, and we'll continue to answer your questions. I apologize when we don't get to everybody's question, but we are peeling away at them one by one. So make sure that you tune in. I mentioned that we've got, if you're interested in taking part, all you have to do is be able to watch our show and take part in a marketing group, and if you do that, then we're going to be able to give out a certain number of Roku so that you can watch us on our Roku channel. So we're going to be posting about that next week. Stay tuned if you're wanting to watch Roku, and by the way, you'll be able to watch a bunch of other channels having to do with autism as well that we also want to bring to your attention. So stay tuned on our Facebook page for more information about that. We are out of time, but I thank you for spending this time with us. We'll be back next week. Until then, please give your kiddos a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.